So anyway, yeah, so don't let me forget, because one of the things that we want to do today before we leave is look again at what's coming up for us to complete. Okay, so thank you for that, Jeremy. Don't let me forget. Homer, what are you thinking?
So when you say in FOL, we don't have, no two objects can have the same name.
Right.
That means we don't have any noun. Because if that's a cube and the other one is a cube, we cannot call them cubes.
No, wonderful. Yeah, sorry to jump on you, but yet no, that's a wonderful question, but that's not accurate to say. So let's think about it this way. Let's start with so again, we've got our world populated. So we've got our Wittgenstein's file open for both the world and the sentences. We'll get to the sentences in a second. What we're looking at is individual objects. And yes, Homer, so for example, D, C, and B, oh, that's right, I forgot. I touch it and it actually does things. D, C, and B are distinct objects, right? They're distinctly named objects, but they're all the same type of object. So think about it this way. Remember I said earlier, so JJ is this specifically named individual. When I want to, and JJ's a human being. Suppose I know another human being, and that human being is also named JJ. I need a way to distinguish them. How do we do that here? Well, so I've given, or sorry, the file is pre-given. The file has this cube named D, this cube named C, this cube named B. So what we end up with is, let me see if I can, okay, wait a minute, hold on. Let me do this. Yeah. Oh, poops. Well, it actually doesn't matter. So let's forget about the cube the predicate cube. Instead, look at medium, medium, medium. Is it fair to say that each of these qualities or properties, mediumness, right, is attributed to different objects?
So medium in FOL is not a noun, it's a predicate.
Correct.
So
yeah,
good.
Good.
Not synonymous with noun.
Right. Right. Yeah. So we've got so when we move from ordinary English into symbolic logic notation, in this case for the simplest sentences, the artificial language, we take so let's think about the grammatical subject, whatever the grammatical subject is. It could be, Paris, France. It can be San Francisco. It can be Deb. It can be JJ, right? Doesn't matter what the grammatical subject is. That is what's known as our individual constant, and that is what takes a predicate, right? That is the thing about which we say medium or large or dodec or cube.
An individual constant is medium B.
As we get into now technical language, the individual constant is going to be the name of the object.
D.
Right. When we're talking about, remember, a singular sentence, that is a sentence, either simple or compound, atomic or compound, a sentence about an individually named person, place, time, thing, right? Okay. So now we go, so let's do this. All right. So every time you open up a pre-given file and you see stuff in red or green, that's just meant to help you, to give you some instructions, right? So let's now go back to the instructions, right? Move through the sentences using the arrow keys on your keyboard, mentally assessing the truth value of each sentence. Use the verify button to check your assessments. All right, so are you ready? Sentence 1 is the notation for the sentence D is large. and not arge, but large, right? So when I have the sentence D is large, I translate it into our first order logic notation. Okay? Now, you might say, well, this seems like an awful lot of work. Why am I doing this? Well, as sentences get more and more complicated, and then as we put sentences into arguments, and the arguments themselves might be quite extensive, the more focus we can put on the logical structure of the sentence, the easier it is to see whether or not the sentences cohere in some logical way. I'm being vague right now on purpose, okay? Victor, what are you thinking?
So the identifier always goes inside the parentheses?
Right, so now we get into some technical details. So you've got what's known as an atomic sentence. An atomic sentence is the simplest linguistic unit that has a truth value. Well, here's an easier way to think about it. An atomic sentence is a sentence that doesn't have any connectives. You might say, well, that's not easier for me to think about. I don't know what a connective is. Well, you will in chapter 3. Suffice it to say right now, when you're looking at the textbook, you're going to see only atomic sentences, right? So think about it this way. Remember I mentioned the sentence, Barack Obama was the 44th president of the United States. A lot of words, still an atomic or simple sentence, right? Because if you dismantle, if you just say Barack Obama, you got a name, and then you've got the copula is, right, which is a way of talking about Barack Obama. Then you got all these other words, right? You could eliminate of the United States, and you could then get Barack Obama was the 44th president. You could even eliminate president of the United States, and you get Barack Obama was the 44th president, or sorry, was the 44th. And then you kind of want to say 44th what, right? But so as you're sort of eliminating words, you're going to get to a point where you don't have a sentence. More specifically, you don't have a sentence that is either true or false. So if you're ever wondering, right, if you have an actual descriptive or prescriptive sentence, ask yourself, well, is it true or false, right? So question, how are you? True. Questions, unless they're rhetorical, are not statements. They're not sentences with truth values. Luke, what are you thinking?
What if you just said 44th president of the United States? Then you just mean Barack Obama.
Right. But is it fair to say that just the clause 44th president of the United States is not it's not a standalone, it's a dependent clause? Is that fair to say? Yeah, needs a subject. Needs a subject. Yeah.
We're like breaking it all down.
Right. So the one, think about it this way. I mean, so when you and I are talking to each other, and if we're sending text messages, I mean, there's loads of shorthand that we use. And as a result, we sort of fill in the gaps. But you know, a system of logic doesn't do the shorthand. You either have or have not articulated an atomic or simple sentence. Now, why is it called an atomic sentence? Well, at the time that there was this sort of big explosion at the turn of the 20th century in terms of certain work in logic. The atom was thought to be the smallest material unit, you know, as the atomists called it, uncuttable, right? We know now that an atom can be sadly broken apart, or maybe not sadly, depending on its use, right? But so just think of an atomic sentence as the same as a simple sentence, which is it is an unbreakable linguistic unit, right? With a truth value. It's got to be a sentence that's either true or false. Rashid, what are you thinking?
True and false the same as yes and no, or is it completely different?
So if you say yes, as in I agree, that's another way to say true.
Okay.
I think kind of what you're pushing on is, well, what makes a sentence, you know, true or false?
Yeah.
We're going to learn several theories of truth, actually. Not all of them, because that would be another class. But here's an example. You might say, in response to the question, is the sentence D is large true? You'd say yes. What we do here is we say, okay, D is large, that sentence is true. I know that it's true because there's a cube, there's an object, there's a block in the world. It's large. There it is. It's large, right? It's named D. Yay, it's true. Verify, you get a green T, right? So yeah, and then, I mean, let's just say loosely for right now, yes is true, no is false. What theory of truth are we talking about? Well, right now, a correspondence theory of truth. Does my sentence correspond to the world or not? Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward, it's an incomplete theory of truth, but to say that a sentence is true is to say that the sentence corresponds to the way the world is. Now, in Tarski's, we have lots of worlds that we can make, right? So, truth is going to be dependent. And notice also that truth is a property and falsity is a property of sentences. We don't say the world itself or a scenario in the world itself is true or false, right? So here it is. Now I'm going to try and describe it accurately. Okay, so let's come back now to some notation items. You take your simple or atomic ordinary English sentence. You find what the sentence is about. That is, and we're going to build on this, but that is your name. The name is known as the individual constant. And then what you say about that thing that's got this name is your predicate. And the predicate gets written out first with the first letter of the predicate capitalized. And then, as I think it was Victor pointed out, in parentheses in lowercase is your name. Okay? Now you might say, well, wait a minute, what do I do with sentences like, so bear with me, with sentences like same size, DF, which is, now let's read this, D is the same size as F, right? D is the grammatical subject, it comes first, but F is also a named entity, hence is also an individual constant, right? So the grammatical subject doesn't end the story with respect to names. Okay, so question for you, I forget, oh, here we are, same size DF. So take a look at the predicate. Now, remember on Tuesday we talked a bit about how you might very well notate sentences differently, right? So you might say, this is a whole lot of writing for this predicate, I'm gonna do things differently, but when we're using these programs, we're entering this game world, this is the way we play, right? And if you're ever not sure, hey, cool buttons, right? You can type or you can click a button. We'll talk more about that. True or false, D is the same size as F. What do you think eyeballing it? I'm not gonna click. Okay, so if you wanna confirm it, and this is one of the, again, the nice things about this program is you get sort of immediate feedback, right? It's not like, I'm yapping at you and you're taking notes and then you've got to go off and do some written homework and you're not sure whether or not things are correct. You do get some level of immediate feedback. And then when you save a file and you send it to the to what's known as the grade grinder, you get almost instantaneous feedback there too. Okay, how are we doing with this? So far, so good? I hope it feels mentally pretty clear. Let's come back really quickly just to piggyback on what Homer was talking about earlier. The discussion of individual names. Because we have a limited number of names, if all those names are taken up, right, but there are more objects on the board than we have names for, sorry to end with a preposition, we're going to have some unnamed objects, right? You can, however, give one object multiple names. Let's go back to JJ. JJ's known not just by JJ, but by other names as well, right? So you can give one object multiple names, You can leave an object unnamed. The one thing you can't do with respect to names is give two objects the same name. The program won't let you do it. Okay. I know there are some other features of the program, and we'll get to those as we go forward. But what's your thinking right now? I hope fairly straightforward. Okay. Remember what I said on Tuesday about the sort of ramping up, the learning curve ramping up. Do take the time now to kind of let the text walk you through what's what. In addition, feel free to come see me. Feel free to see our course embedded tutor. Again, I'm pretty sure it's Lindsay, who is wonderful, and she helps people with the programs too. Take the time to learn now how just the sort of the logistics of the program, because not only will you, inadvertently, in a sense, be doing logic, but also it'll save you time in the long run. Okay. Now, when you're done with a file and you want to save it, if it's a pre-given file, don't just save over the file, because that's gonna then potentially alter the file. In addition, if you don't save the file the way that the naming convention asks, when you go to submit the file for scoring, submit, the grading program's gonna, I don't even know what you're talking about. Right, so more on that in a little bit. So here's what I'll do. If I'm done with Wittgenstein's world, notice I modified the world, right? When I go to close it, save the changes. Oh, heck no, right? Okay. Let's keep going with features of Tarski's world. Exercise 34 says. Between, whoopsie, here we go again. Stop. No. Okay, between D, E, F. Is it fair to say that the way we can read back out into ordinary English is this? D is between E and F. Right? Now, you might say, Mia, you used the word and. You said on Tuesday that and is a conjunction, and that's part of what makes a compound sentence. You're cheating. You're jumping to chapter 3. Well, no, if we think about what the predicate between does. It's a relational predicate, just like same size or front of, back of, right? And what its job is in ordinary English is to designate a relationship between three objects. And so in ordinary English, we're forced to use a conjunction, but not as a connective, not as a logical connective, right? I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, just know that when you've got, for right now, right, we're going to work two ways. One is I'm going to try to explain things in a way that I hope makes sense, but then I'll also say, follow this rule, right? So some people will say, Mia, I don't want all the explanations. It's boring. And other people will, just give me the rule and I'll follow the rule, right? And then other people will say, well, I can't follow the rule unless I understand why I'm following this rule. So I'll try to do both. So we've got the three-place predicate. We won't deal with more than three arity or arguments. And arity and argument in this context just means the number of, in this case, individual constants a predicate takes, right? So between is a three-place predicate or a three-arity predicate. One quirky feature of Tarski's world, which does not comport with our regular connotation of the predicate between, is this. When you are talking about objects, one object being between two others, we're talking about either the same diagonal, the same column, or the same row. So if I say, so let me see if I've got this right. So Christina, yeah, or no, Vicky, if I say Vicky is between Jennifer, Sure. Jennifer, yeah. Vicky is between Kate and Snow, right? So we can all, I will make you guys uncomfortable. Everybody stare at Vicky, and Vicky is in front of Kate, in back of Snow. We can make all sorts of sentences, right? So they're on the same column. And that works for us in our ordinary ways of thinking about between. But here's another between that works for us in ordinary English but doesn't work for Tarski's world. If I say, okay, so behind Deb, we're making eye contact right now, is, I want to say Chloe, but it is? It's right? Whoa. Okay. All right. So everybody is staring at Chloe. If I say that Chloe is between Carl and Homer, right? Here's what, if you can't see them, here's Chloe, and then here's Carl and Homer. You and I are fine with saying that Chloe's between the two. Tarski's world is going to say, no, Okay, so it's just a quirky thing. I'm going to call it a quirky thing. But remember, just as you would do in a video game, you do in Tarski's world. If Tarski's world says between means same diagonal, same column or same row, that's what you follow. Okay? What do we think so far? Pretty okay? Okay. Now, let's suppose that we want to save this file. So let me jump down here. Oopsie, oh boy. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, so, oh, sorry, whoa, that goes so fast. Faster, and now that goes so slowly. Here we go. All right, so here's exercise 1.4, translating atomic sentences. You've got your program open, Tarski's world, and there's no file to open. It says start a new sentence file and translate each of these sentences into our symbolic logic notation, right? Or the first order logic notation. So once you've done that, and this is key, notice we get the naming convention. So at the end of every exercise, you're told how to save a file until you get to the point where they think that you should know already, and they just say save it as you usually do. So here you're saving the file as sentences 1.4 because that's the exercise number, and then world 1.4 because that's the exercise. And then when you save it in a folder or a place that's easy for you to keep organized and easy for you to access, right, it'll have the right file type appended to it, okay? Then you're in a position to attach the file and submit it to the submit program. So let's take a moment to look through that. So let's do this. I'm going to take this file and I'm going to save sentences as, and now instead of saving it within the pre-given exercise folder, I'm going to just put it somewhere else. So let's say I put it on my monkey drive, right? So I'm going to pretend that I've got something like, I don't know, let's just pretend it was 1.4. So sentences 1.4, save it, so that, I'm going to go back into my folder, so that it is, it's in my monkey drive, right? And by the way, I didn't delete from doing some practice last semester some proof files, right? So notice that we have sentences 1.4.sen. Then when I go to upload the file, it's saved correctly. If you get some sort of error message in the submit program, it's because it doesn't know how to read you, right? What are you thinking, Victor?
How about the world 1.4 part?
It would be the same thing. You would just do world 1.4. So here, let's pretend that we, let's just, this will give us a chance to also make a world. Click new, and always, whenever you click new to bring an object into being, you creators, it's going to be a small cube in the far left front space, right? So let's suppose I want to save this. Since it's an unnamed file, I just say save world and it'll come up. And I'll do, let's make it world 1.4. I'm saving it in my monkey drive, and there it is. Yeah? So now I'm going to open up, so the submit folder is the folder that contains what is effectively an email program, right? It is your direct, it's a direct line to the grade grinder gods, right? There's no mediation. Well, I guess the program itself is a mediation, but anyway, that's a whole different conversation. Open up the submit folder, double click on submit, and I can't make this bigger. I can't make the font bigger. So here's what you see. You're going to enter your registration ID, right? That, remember, your registration ID is your LPL license, is your language proof and logic license. That's the license number. That's the credential that you have for as long as you want, right? So you put that in there. You put your name, the email address that to which you want your account keyed or tied, then my name, Mia Wood, and then the I think it's on Canvas, but the email that you'll want to tie, the email of mine that you want to use so that your work goes into the folder is woodmc@piercecollege.edu. Right. And if you happen to submit anything before I've created our folder for this semester, you'll get some message like, wow, there's no such course. Don't worry about it. I just haven't created the folder yet. Right. So email. Now, let me go into choose files to submit. And you'll go to, let's go to, I think it's the D drive. Yeah, so my monkey drive is the D drive. I take as many files as I want. I add them, and boom, there they are. Click done. Now it's probably going to give me a guff because I'm saying submit files, but I haven't, filled out any of the fields. And I always forget my ID, so let's try. Let's just pretend it's that one. Oh, goodness sakes. Blah, 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 blah. I know it's lame, right? At Gmail. Why not? And then we'll pretend that mine also is at Gmail. Okay. All right, so when you hit submit files, you get this window popping up that says, really submit these files. And now here's something that you'll want to know about. Submit grade report to just me or also to Mia, to the instructor. What I hope that you will do is this, but don't stress if you don't. When you're ready for me to know that you've done the work and everything's fabulous, you'll hit you'll click instructor 2, and you'll send me all the files at once because I get a report for each submission, right? So sometimes people will give me, I'll get one report per file, so I end up with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. It's not horrible, but I prefer if you chunk them all together. But if you just want Grade Grinder to check your work and you don't care if I see it, right, then hit just me. Think about the work that you'll do this way. All right, so now we get to some assessment stuff. If you work through as many exercises as possible, and I say as possible, in the following, with the following thought. Once you believe you've mastered what it is that you need to master to move on, you may realize, hey, you know, I've only done a handful of exercises. I don't need to do more. But if you do all of them, then you've covered your bases, right? For what, in terms of because what I ask you to submit is from the textbook. As we go forward, the more practice, the better, because for most of us, practice and continual study of the material is going to help you be successful. But so when I say do as many as possible, what I mean is do as much as you think is going to be sufficient for your mastery. But then also remember that when you're looking at the exam, you'll know, oh, she wants me to submit these. Oh, I've already done them. And then you're done with the exam in advance, right? Okay. So I'm just going to, and you can add a text message if you want, like, hey, Mia, logic's so much fun. Something like that, right? Then you click OK. Your work should be sent almost instantaneously, and you should get a report back almost instantaneously. We'll talk more about that on Tuesday, because there's nothing you're submitting, if I'm not mistaken, this week. But let me double check before we leave this. Yes, and you can save settings if you want, but I don't. Okay, so before moving on, let us do this. Let's go to our home page. Really? Okay. So I guess we're not connected to the interwebs. Okay. All right, so hold on. Today, we were talking about how we use sentences that are true or false to draw inferences. That's a new word that I haven't used before, but we use these sentences to attempt to prove or establish claims, right? So let's make a quick distinction between the modes or ways that you can go to or work to establish a claim. So suppose that you drive a regular old, gas guzzler, and and this was me a number of years ago. Your fuel gauge has long since broken, right? So you never know if you have gas in the tank. That used to be one of my adventures, right? How far can I go? So suppose that you don't know, you haven't been paying attention, you're busy, you got stuff to do. You go out to your car and you go to start the car, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. Zippo, zero, silence, crickets. Oh, turn the key again. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. Crickets, zero, silence. Right? Well, you have a couple of inferences. One of which is more plausible than the other, but both of which are more plausible than other inferences, right? So remember I said, you turn the key and nothing happens, silence. Is it more plausible to infer from that scenario that, oh man, my tank is empty, I should have tanked up, put gas in my car, or my battery's dead? What do you think? Based on either your actual experience or what you hear from others? Battery. It's where she's like, it's always a battery. So more times than not, when you go to start your car and you hear nothing, right, you think battery. You infer, therefore it's the bat, right? It's more plausible because of the evidence. On the other hand, if you put your key in the ignition, you turn the ignition, and you hear the sort of sputter, right, that's associated with an empty gas, then it would be more plausible, right? What's not plausible is for you to infer, oh, those gremlins, they did it again. They stole my engine, right? I mean, that's just not a reasonable conclusion. What? Because it doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened. Now, is it possible? Well, I'd like to think so. I mean, think about, well, think about it this way. Not quite the same scenario, but consider the coelacanth, right? There was the big, ugly, stinky fish, and for some time it was thought to have gone extinct. And then it turned up in some marketplace, I think in like Southeast Asia in like the 70s or 80s. And scientists were kind of shocked, like, oh, we said the coelacanth was extinct, but it's not, right? Now, granted, there were coelacanths, as opposed to we believe there aren't any gremlins ever anywhere, right? But just because you don't see it or experience it doesn't mean it's impossible that it's there, right? Okay, so that's one way to draw an inference, which is by way of what experience teaches you. And as Rashid points out, our common experience is, oh, it's got to be the battery. What are you thinking, Rashid?
No, it was a dumb thought. Do you believe in ghosts? That's
No.
dumb thoughts.
Yeah, I try never to tell you what I think, but yeah, I'll give you the ghost thing. Yeah, no ghosts. So we're not going to engage in experiential reasoning, which is to say reasoning by what we observe with our senses or what we inherit from tradition, that sort of thing, right? Matthew, what are you thinking? Oh, and I apologize. You had a question earlier, and I addressed Kate's, but not yours. I apologize.
Isn't that deduction or induction?
Yeah, so what I just talked about with the car, that's experiential or empirical reasoning is what inductive reasoning is all about. It's sort of the foundation of scientific reasoning. We're going to, we're not doing that. We're going to do something else. So bear with me. It's going to be worth it, okay? I should have had it ready, but I per usual didn't. All right, so hold on. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, you guys ready?
Hey, Grandma, you were born here like we were, right, Grandma? Hey, Grandma, how come we never talk about Wisconsin? Grandma?
Great cheese comes from happy cows. Happy cows come from California. Real California
Whoa,
cheese.
hey, hold on there. Hold on.
Happy cows. Happy cows come from California.
Okay, what just happened? It was super cute, yeah. But what do we have? Great cheese comes from happy cows. Happy cows come from California. And then the commercial ends. It's a cliffhanger. So, totally.
They said happy cows come from and stop it there and say that.
No, great cheese comes from California. Or sorry, great cheese comes from happy cows. Happy cows come from California. And then it ends. So, Tuesday, we're going to talk about, oh, spoiler alert, Luke drew the inference. That's the sort of reasoning with which we're going to be engaged, namely reasoning where the inference is extracted from what's given to you. So more about that on Tuesday.